This is more geared towards somebody who hasn't been playing Path long or hasn't had spent a ton of time in it. Number one is going to be left clicking, which you might be like, I understand how left clicking works, but if you have something, let's say I have one of these and I left click, it'll pick up one. Oh, I can't put it back. I have more than a stack of 10 of these, so I can only pick up 10, right? If you control left click, it'll move one stack to your inventory. Similarly, if you control left click when you have the tab open, it will place the item in your tab. And that doesn't just mean stacks. So like any item, it'll go into the tab. So pretend this is my inventory. I've just finished up a map and I'm like, I want to put all of this away, or I want to sell this. This works when you have any stash open. That means trade windows, that means vendors. Same as if this was a vendor and I wanted to sell all the things, I would left control and left click, moves it, the whole item, the stack, whatever it is. If it's 1, it moves 1. If you have 4, it moves all 4. It just moves that whole item over. Affinity tabs. If you have any stash tab that is a premium stash tab, as you can see, there's little icons that tell you what they are. So this diamond is a premium stash tab. This little orb here is a currency stash tab. The card one is a card stash tab, right? If you have any of these, it works with all of them. Not these remove only ones, of course. So for currency, you can check this box and get the affinity for currency. And then no matter what tab you have open, currency will go here. So this one has an affinity for divination cards. This one has an affinity for currency. That's because that's the only thing that can go into these stash tabs, right? Sorry, I also didn't clarify. You right click on the top of the stash tab, you can change the name, you can set it to public, which we'll ignore for a minute. You can change the color, and then you can check the box for affinities. So this one here is a standard premium tab. You can do anything you want with this. You can give it any of the affinities. Like if I give this one currency and something else already has currency, what happens? It removes the affinity for that. So if you don't have a currency stash, you don't have a div card stash, you can make this into that by just making the affinity here. One of the things that's neat, I don't want to put my currency, for some reason, I don't want to put my currency into that currency stash when I put it in. If you control and shift click left click, it will put it into the current stash that you're looking at. So control click, move it to the affinity stash. Control shift click left click, moves it to the current stash. The control shift mechanic actually has multiple uses. You can use it to buy, if you want to buy a single one of these, you can left click on it and move it over. You can also control click, and that buys one at a time. And you can control shift click, and it will buy one stack full. It will buy one stack. If you don't have enough to buy a whole stack, it will buy however many it can. So if you happen to want to trade in like jewelers for fusings, that's a good way to do it. Control Alt. So there is chat in this game, and you might be wondering, how do I get an item into the chat and like display it so that you can hover it? Maybe you're telling a friend, maybe you're trading, whatever. The buttons are Control plus Alt, and that will put it into the chat. This does have some limitations, so I've put this here. This is a unique item. I believe if this changes, that this, see, the item no longer exists the way that it was initially pasted in there, or initially put in there. So if you put something in there and then you change it, it doesn't exist anymore. It won't put it in the chat for you because that item doesn't exist anymore. You have to redo it. If you have something like this where you have a full stack of it, I don't want 20 of these. I want to trade 10 to my friend or something like that. One way you can do that is to shift and click and drag this or type a number in, and you can make a stack size of that much. Another way to do this is if you have it on your cursor, you're holding it and you press shift, you can place one at a time. So if you have a stack of say 20, well, 20 is a silly number. Say you have a stack of 7 and you don't want to shift click and press 5, you could just pick it up, shift click twice, and it'll put 2 down. This is also the same as if you want to use an item. So if I want to use this, I right click on it, and now it's on my cursor, and if I use it once, it goes away. But if I hold shift when I do it, I can keep clicking as many times as I need. You know? Awesome. 6 link to shavs for funsies. Let's look at using currency. So a lot of the currency isn't really self-explanatory, and you might waste a lot of it. If you don't have this currency stash tab, how to phrase this? It won't be as neat and orderly. It'll look something like this, where things are just randomly thrown about for you. However, currency stash tab is awesome. I'd recommend it, but if you don't have it, it's fine. You just gotta, read what you're doing, look at what you're doing. One of, not the most, because I don't have one. One of the most, not the most. One of the expensive currencies is exalted orbs. If you find one of these, that's like tier 2 currency, right? Mirrors are tier 1. Obviously, I don't have any. One mirror is like hundreds of exalts, okay? One exalt is, it depends on the league, but for instance, last league, I think the ratio was something like one exalt is somewhere between 120 chaos or so, right? Those are the 2 big ones: chaos, exalt, mirrors if you're insanely lucky. So most things are in relation to exalts or chaos orbs. So 1 exalt is 150 chaos orbs. 1 chaos orb is 20 orbs of alchemy. 1 chaos orb is 1.5 orbs of regret, right? Like, this is the ratio of things. So if you're selling, we'll make up numbers for this. If you want to get 10 orbs of scouring, that might be 1 orb of chaos, right? That you would trade to somebody. Most of these make some amount of sense if you know what you're looking at. So if you press Alt on an item, I think any item, every item, you can press Alt on it, and it gives you this little extra detail where you can see suffix and prefix before each modifier. And you can also see implicit. The one at the top, anything above the line, I can't move my mouse to show you, but that line that says 10% increased spell damage, and then the next one that says 117% increased energy shield, that dividing line is implicits and explicits. So implicits do not change if you use a Chaos Orb, which randomly picks new modifiers. This will always be dexterity and intelligence. With one exception, Vaal Orbs. You can Vaal an item, and that gives you a chance, a very small chance, to get a new implicit. So if you Vaal something, you have a chance to get no change in the implicits, right? It could stay as dexterity or intelligence, or it could give you a unique implicit that is random, but could be good. This one is additional projectile. You typically do not want to use a Vaal Orb unless you're like min-maxing, because once something is Vaaled, it gets the corrupted tag. And when you have the corrupted tag, in almost all circumstances, you cannot do anything with that item anymore. So like these have corrupted, I cannot use any more chaos on them. I can't use any of these currencies on them anymore because it's corrupted. When you look at something like this, you can see all the stuff it is. I can actually post it into the chat so we can look at it. And if you use a Chaos Orb, it will change all of these prefixes and suffixes on the bottom there to random anything, right? So you can see they've changed completely. They're completely random prefixes and suffixes. It's as if this item has dropped again. You can also do this by using a scouring, which turns it into a nothing, a blank item, and then an Orb of Alchemy. That is effectively the same exact thing as doing a Chaos Orb once, is a scouring and an alchemy. This is typically cheaper. I was mostly going to talk about jewelers and fusings, because if you're new to the game, chances are you're not going to have a ton of this other currency to run around with. So like any of the chaoses you get, you might want to hoard them so that you can buy some items, you know, stuff like that. You're not going to want to spam your chaoses on anything. This has 6 sockets. That means you can put 6 gems into this, color-coded. This staff here only has 3 sockets. Not very useful. By the end of the game, it's practically required to have something with 6 sockets and 6 links. You could do that by using a jeweler's orb on it. There are some restrictions. The item level that is near the top third of the page here. This one says item level 75 on it. This one says item level 86. The item level is important because it determines how many sockets something can get. So this is item level 75, that's fine. If it's item level 50 or higher, you can get all 6 sockets. And not everything can get 6 sockets. Gloves, boots, helmet, 4 sockets. Bows, staffs, armors, 6 sockets, right? But if this was item level anything lower than 50, it could not get 6 sockets. By the end of the game, everything can have 6 sockets, but if you're just leveling up and you find a nice item, say you found this staff and you're like, I can't wait to use the staff, but it turns out it's only item level 30, you could only get a maximum of 4 sockets in it at that point. But it's just something to keep in mind, that if you're buying an item from a player or you're trading, right? Just hover over it, make sure it's the item level that you're looking for. You would use a jeweler's orb to randomly try to get more sockets or less sockets. So basically, you use it and it randomizes how many sockets are on the item. And you just keep doing this, and eventually you'll get to 6, right? Such as this. So now you have 6 sockets, but they're not linked together. So jewelers, random number of sockets. Fusings, random number of links between those sockets, of which you can have something 6 linked. Like my bow here has all the links. My armor has all the links. And randomizes the number of links on it when you use a fusing. You don't always need to get to 6. For example, my boots here are not 4 linked. That means I can have 2 links and not have to worry. So maybe you want a 4 and a 2 link on your staff or something like that. But in general, that's how you link. Chromatic orbs. So jeweler's orbs randomize the number of sockets. Fusings randomize the number of links between those sockets. Chromatic orbs randomizes the colors of those sockets. If you notice, when I'm clicking this, it's mostly giving me blue. That's because the required attribute is 180 int, and the color of the socket and the frequency of that color depend on that attribute. So when it's int, you're most likely to get blue sockets. When it's dex, you're most likely to get green sockets. When it's strength, you're most likely to get red sockets. So if you have something that's a little bit strength and a little bit int, you'll mostly get blue and red sockets. Green are harder to get. So for something like a Shavs or anything that has a very high one stat requirement, getting anything like outside of the blue is called off color. It's going to be pretty difficult. So blessed orbs change the number on the implicit. They don't change what it is, but they change the value of it. So this can go from 3 to 10% on the implicit at the top. So it's already at 10%, but now you can see it's 5%. And then back to 10. So that's what a blessed orb does. They're relatively cheap, with some exceptions depending on some mechanics. Divine orbs are not very cheap. They are acquired by just dropping as raw currency or by selling a 6-linked item. You typically aren't going to want to sell, say, a unique 6-linked item like this one, because this is worth way more than one divine orb. But if you find a 6-linked item, that might be something that you can sell for a divine orb. A divine orb will change all of the explicit modifiers, and I should say it'll change the values of them. So this can go from 100 to 150 increased energy shield. Let's change that, and we got 130. Let's do it again, and we got 108. So I had a couple, I used them up. We got 2 more. Let's do 2 more. So if you're trying to min-max, that's how you would do that. You know, now it has 150% instead of whatever it started at. So you can see that this says tier 4, tier 10, tier 2 in parentheses around these things, or at the end of the modifiers. Tier 1 is generally the best. I think in all cases now, there used to be some differences, but now I think tier 1 is always the best. So if you're trying for something like tier 1 life, that's going to give you the most life you can get on this type of item. Everything has different tiers. I take that back. Even if something can get the same modifier as something else, the tiers might be different. So the rings can get tier 1 life at 70 to 79. But chess pieces, they might get 100 to 109 as their life tier 1. Oh, my gloves here have 80 to 89 as tier 1 life. Tiers are also dictated by item level. So if you're looking for a specific type of modifier, you do need to have at a minimum item level for that to appear. So one I know for sure is bow attacks fire 2 additional arrows. That's locked behind item level 86 and higher on bows. So if you have a level 85 or lower bow, well, an 85 bow, you can get bow attacks fire additional arrows, but it's only 1 additional arrow. Why is linking? So linking is how you use your skill gems. So my skill is explosive arrow. On its own, doesn't do much, but I can then add another. I have this all linked up. This adds more damage. This adds more damage, and on and on. It's only affected by the things that it shares a link with. So what I mean by that is this is 6-linked. So, oh, I wish it would go away. It doesn't let me hover that without. There we go. You can see when I hover it, it highlights all of the links because this skill gem is affected by everything, right? And every time I hover a skill or a gem here, it shows me that it's working in tandem with this here. So for something such as this armor, let me bring it down. This support gem is affecting this blue one, this blue one, this blue one, and this green one, but not this green one. So some of these are affecting, this green one is affecting everything but the red one. This blue one, oh gosh, this green one is affected by these, this red, green, green. Just something to keep in mind. Part of it is this is a support gem. It can't link with this. It's not supported. Part of it might be this is a different level, or like this only supports up to X level. This gem here says supports gems that are level 38 or lower. It says it can only support gems that require level 38 or lower. So you can see that it's only supporting this Immortal Call here, even though it's linked with multiple things. That's because these two here they require more than level 38. As you can see, but it requires level 70. Links are how you increase your damage, for the most part. I'm not going to go into the hyper specifics of that, but if you're lacking damage and you're following a build guide, it might tell you need to link your explosive arrow with totem, with burning damage, etc. If you're not following a guide, you might look at it and go, well, my damage sucks, what's going on? And if you don't have a 6 link, or you don't have a 5 link, or a 4 link, like, that's one thing to look at, you know? How many support gems are supporting your skill that you're trying to use? The other thing is, support gems have numbers on them. There are 2 words that are very important on these support gems and skill gems and all the things in this game, and they are more and increased. So this support gem says supported skills deal 10% increased burning damage, and also says deal 39% more burning damage. Those do sound very similar, but they mean very different things. The increased and the more, they affect the values differently. So if something says 10% increased damage, it effectively means if you have 100 damage, it means 10 damage, right? 10% of 100. The more is actually later on in the equation, and so this would, if I had 100 damage and I have 10% increased, that's 110 damage, and then it goes on to the more, and it multiplies it by another 39% more. Like, and they all stack together. I'm not entirely sure of how to explain the specifics. So the opposite of more is less. This one here deals more damage with ailments. Good. Deals increased damage over time. It's okay. Deals less damage. That's very bad. Typically, things that do less are going to have a huge impact on you because they function the same way as more does. It will increase or decrease your damage multiplicativity by multiples, whereas reduced and increased will add or subtract from the values you're trying to get. So if you have something that says 10% reduced, that is different from 10% less. Similarly, 10% increased, different from 10% more. Third-party tools. I didn't prepare for that at all. If you want to learn more about specific tools, go to the sidebar on the Path of Exile subreddit. The 2 biggest ones that I use are Path of Building, which you can plug in other people's or your own builds, and it will tell you all of the items that they're using, all of the skill points they've selected, all of the stats as far as how much damage they're doing. It's very comprehensive. It's very confusing, at least for me. The other one I use is a price checking tool where there's a hotkey where I can take an item like this and I can press the combination of keys, and that will automatically go and search the website for a price for that item as best as it can. So for a unique item, not very difficult. It's got a unique name. People can put it out there with a unique, like, it's very identifiable. For something that's rare, such as this yellow item here, a little more difficult to do because not everyone's going to have an item like this, but still able to do sometimes, mostly. Another very important thing since we brought up third-party tools. So item filters are super important. So item filters will make something show up like this. It'll make a noise when you throw it on the ground. You can customize these colors. You can customize the noises. It's very, very handy. If you don't have this, actually, we can just do this right now. If you don't have an item filter on, this is what this looks like. Not very good. Like, this is very, very easily missable. I think it comes with a default filter these days. It would look like this. Better, but not amazing. I use one called Filter Blade, which is it's that third-party tool I was talking about. One of, I guess. You can customize it. There is a website it is literally called filterblade.xyz, and you can go there and customize it, or you can like pick on a slider, like I want to get every item, I want to only get the most uber strict, never want to see anything except for a mirror, right? And then you can just download the file, put it into the folder here when you click open file folder, and then start selecting it from the dropdown. You can have different filters for different things. I only use one filter, but if you're doing multiple different types of content and you want to go through it somehow, and during some content you want to find everything, during some content you want to find only the expensive stuffs, easy way to do that is to change the filter, click reload, and you're good to go. There are recipes. One of them that's very apparently not well known is the Scarab Recipe. So you can take a scarab, and we'll use one. You take 2 scarabs of matching type and rarity, and 1 Orb of Horizons, and you will get, in return, 1 random scarab of the same rarity. I can't remember which it is, so we're going to test it right here. If I put 5, as in 1 stack of 2, 5 times, in the orb, it gives me different ones. Cool. I wanted to maximize my chances of getting ambush scarabs, for example. I would break these into sets of 2, and that gives me 5 chances instead of 1 chance of. Instead of 1 stack of 5, it'll give me 5 stacks of 1. Does that make sense?